All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been going over the PowerPoint presentations for Murox ASP.NET 4.6 with C# 2015 6th edition. And I'm in the middle of Chapter 13, which is how to use SQL data sources. And I've got some sort of good news in that I copied the book applications folder over. I copied it over to my desktop, and when I did, I think this is the right one. I've got to close the other one now. I can now, no, I think that's the wrong one. So yep, that's the wrong one. So let me close this. No, I don't want to save. Okay, so now with this up, I can run it and I don't get an error until it begins to run. And now it says the connection name Halloween Connection 2 was not found in the application config file, or the connection string is empty. All right, so it says there I've got an SQL data source 3 that was called connection string 2, and I think that's the one that I just added, to be honest with you, because I copied this over. So let's do this. Let's go to that last connection string that we added, which was number 3, and I'm just going to remove it. All right. Now that's probably not the best thing in the world to do, but I'm going to just try it anyway and see if this runs now. The longer it takes, believe it or not, the better it is, because the better that, there we go. Okay, so here are all of our costumes. If I change to masks, there we got all of our masks. If I change to props, we've got all of our props. Finally, if I change to special effects, we get all of our special effects. Good deal. All right. So, we talked about before, and you saw it a little bit, and that is if I come in here, in fact, let's do it, that if I come in here and I click on my data source, and I don't know which one of these it's on, but that's still okay. I'm going to click on this one here, and I'm going to click on configure data source. All right, notice again, if I click here, it'll show me my connection string. All right, I've already got my connection, so I'm going to click next. This is what's here, but the point is, if I were to, let's cancel that. Let me try this one here. Next. Specify, I want that to show, and I don't know why it's not. Huh. All right, I'm going to bring back a new connection string. I'm going to come in and add another SQL data source because I want to show you what's going on here. So there's number 3. All right, configure, go to here. I'll use the Halloween connection, which basically is saying connect to the Halloween database. Click next. Now, notice where it says where there. So let's say that I want all of these. Okay? If I click where, now I can tell how I want to link these up. So what they show in the book is I want the category ID to be equal to a control. What control? Well, I want it to be equal to my drop-down list of categories. So I would do that. I can give it a default value, so if there's nothing there, it can grab that default value. But once I've set all this up, now I basically have said, notice that @ sign. That's what's important, because what that is saying is when you run the program, whatever category ID you have currently chosen at runtime while the program is running, that's the one I want you to associate. So whichever one I choose in the drop-down list, that's the one I want you to grab from the database. So I click Add, and I click OK, and now it's been added. So this looks, so select the category ID, the short name, and the log name, but I'm saying where the category ID in the database is equal to the category ID in the drop-down list. If I want to do an order by, I can order it by long name or short name or category ID in either ascending or descending order. And if I wanted to do it first by long name, then by short name, etc., I can do that too. All right. There's also a thing here that says advanced. All right. Now, the reason that advanced is important, I want to mention two things about these. If I click this to generate insert, update, and delete statements, if I do that, and then I click OK, it will generate insert, update, and delete statements based on the select. If I do that, I must choose the category ID. The primary key is one of my fields. And what if you say I don't get it? I'm going to uncheck category ID, and I'm going to click Advanced. Notice how this grays out. It does not allow me to generate insert, updates, and deletes because I have not chosen the primary key. But as soon as I come back in and choose the primary key, now it's not grayed out anymore. So if I check that, now it asks, and you may remember this from an earlier chapter when we talked about optimistic concurrency. With optimistic concurrency, what that does is it says if we had a database that could be being utilized by more than one person at a time, and if somehow two people were grabbing and making changes to the same table, and they tried to save at the same time, we would let the first one save, but the second one would get an error message because it would already be being used. So I'm going to leave that off, and I'll just click OK there. And if I go next, I can again test the query. And don't worry if it doesn't say anything. That's no biggie. It really isn't. All right? And click Finish. And then that'll be done. Okay? Now, let's see if it put in the connection string in here for another one. There was the one. And I think it just uses the same one every time. I don't think I'm going to get an error for doing this, just because I added a new one in there, but I don't think it's really connected, so it's not doing anything. If we run the program and it still runs, that's a really good thing. So I added what would be referred to as a superfluous connection because we don't need it. There's our costumes, there's our special effects, etc. But the cool thing is, this is grabbing the information. All right, this is grabbing the information. It's saying to the database, okay, what I want you to do is I want you to look through the database and I want you to show me every one of the short, I think it's the short descriptions, but grab them from the database. And then based on the one we got here, give me all the associated information, the associated product information based on that. So again, this is saying right here, all of these IDs are associated with that category IDs. So these are the product IDs. They're all associated with that category ID. And you say, special effects isn't a category ID. No, it's not. Special effects is what we see because, for example, if that said something like Cat03, we may not remember that that's special effects. So we use that where clause to specify one or more conditions that we constructed using the controls and the associated dialog box. All right, we created a condition by selecting the column we wanted to compare, which was the category ID. We selected the operator we wanted to use for the comparison, which was equal, and the source of the data of the comparison, which was a control, the drop-down list. This field, right here. Then we clicked Add. Now the source of that data doesn't have to be in here. This does not have to be a control, just so you're aware of that. As they mention in the textbook, that source can be a literal value, so we could have just typed something in there basically. It can be another control on the form like it is here, a cookie, an HTML form field, and there are other things that it can be also, but typically it'll be control. After you construct that condition, we have to make sure to always click on that add button, because otherwise it doesn't take effect. When we did all that, you saw that at sign there. That is called a select parameter. That's used by the select statement of the data source. The ASPX code that defines this type of parameter is generated automatically when we use aware. So this stuff didn't come up. All we had previous to this, before we did this, was just select category ID, comma, long description from categories. Once we clicked aware, that's when all this stuff came up. So a control parameter is a parameter whose value is obtained from another control. So we obtain the value from the drop-down list. Once you understand how to use this, hopefully the stuff will start making a little bit more sense. Now this example was generated by the web forms designer. So in other words, we got this to run and there was no actual C# code that we had to enter ourselves. We did not have to enter any code. All right, so there was the where. These are the different types of things that you can use in there. Again, we're going to be concerned with the control parameter most of the time. And the control parameter, as it says right there, will have, in fact, let's look at the other ones. The control parameter defines a parameter that gets its value from a control on the page. All right. You can have a form parameter that gets it from a form field, a session parameter that gets it from a session variable, a profile parameter that gets it from a profile property, a cookie parameter that gets its value from a cookie, and a route parameter that gets its value from a route. These fields here, the name is the parameter name, the type is the SQL data type of the parameter. In our case, it was the drop-down list. The control ID, which is the ID of the web form control that supplies the value, that was DDL category ID, I believe. The property name, which is the name of the property from the web form control that supplies the value, and a default value if we want to have one. So this created a much more, in fact, let's see if we can see this. This was the one that we created. If I come here and I configure and I look at the connection string, and we still connected that way. Let me stop the run here. It's kind of hard because in many ways this stuff is all done behind the scenes. And it's you checking some buttons, for lack of better words. All right? But this is what got created. So this one right here was for our first data source. All right? And then we told it what we wanted was the product ID, the name, the unit price, the on hand from the products table. But it was where the category ID was equal to that category ID that we used from the drop-down list. And we add the select parameter. This is the kind of the key one that's right here. That was selected. Again, it says use the drop down. All right. When we went in there and chose that we said we wanted to generate those select, update, insert, and deletes, okay? This stuff was basically done for us when we did that, when we came in here and did that for this one. When we selected the where. We could have come in here, again, and not done it with a generated the advance, okay? We can put in our own statement if we want to do this. Had we checked here and then click next, all right, this shows what's in the book on page 457. So there's the update that's done automatically, the insert that's done automatically, the deletes that's done automatically, all right? And if we wanted to change this, we'd have to go into what's called the query builder that's right here, all right? And this query builder is discussed on pages 458 and 459. Let me make it bigger so you can see what's all going on here. It's really not that difficult to work with. If by chance you've ever worked with Microsoft Access, it's very similar to the windows you get in there. Not identical, but similar. Now, let's jump back to here. Okay, so I just showed you that dialog box for a custom select. I just showed that to you. And here's the query builder block. So for these custom statements, as it says, if we entered the first option, which basically said that we didn't want to generate our own query by clicking on those fields like we had been doing, we could enter it ourselves. So if you want to use statements other than those generated automatically, you do that by entering custom statements. We could have either grabbed something that was in a stored procedure, or when we did this, again, I don't know if they show it way back here or not. There. This is what we have been selected previously, so specify columns. But if you choose the specify a custom SQL statement or stored procedure, you can either put all your stuff in a stored procedure and call it up, or call these up, in which case you're going to bring up this query builder box, dialog box. And when you do that, again, it looks like this. All right? And you break this particular thing up into different sections. This is called the diagram pane right here. So right now I've got the categories table. All right. And I know there is a way in the categories table that we can come in and we can add another table in here. I'm trying to remember how to do that. Since we've only been working with the one table, that's all we have available here. Had we chosen two different tables, like categories and products, they'd both be there. All right. This is the diagram pane here, so I can add any of these. You'll notice if I don't want long name, if I check on that, now the long name is not checked anymore. If I check on it again, it comes back. This second box is called the grid pane, and that shows everything that's been selected. The third pane is the SQL pane. This is what's actually been generated. And if I want to run the query, I can get the results down here, because this is the results pane down in here. So if I click execute query, it says to do this, we have to generate, or we have to put in a value here. Let's see if we put in cat01. It says it's waiting for a response from the data source. It didn't find anything. I don't remember what those categories were, so that's on me. All right. let's see if I yeah, it's bringing that up again. I don't want that. We'll do this. Bum. There's categories. And if I click Show Table Data, okay, it's the word costume, so that's what I wanted to put in there. So, see if I can get back to where I was. Back to here. Next. Okay, Query Builder. You saw all this before, but what I'm going to do is manually put in right here. So it says execute the query. It'll tell me to put something in. I'm going to put in costumes. Click OK. And let's see if I get any results here. There it is. That's from this query right here. Give me the short name, the long name, the category ID. They're all costumes in this case. All right. So this query builder is displayed. If you choose to enter a custom SQL statement, then click the query builder button. It lets you build a select statement by choosing columns from one or more tables. I only did one table. All right. We should be able, like I said, we should be able to come in here and add, I believe, another table. I apologize. I don't remember how to do it, but there should be a way that we can come in here and add yet another table to this. Let's see. Add table. There we go. All right. So I right mouse clicked and chose Add Table. So if we choose Products and click Add, there we go. And the system recognizes what we have here. All right. So notice it does a join. So if what we say we want here, so I don't want to show anymore the category ID. I don't want to show the short name. I don't want to show the long name. But from here, I want the product name, let's say the short description, the unit price, and the on hand. So you can see it's building that. So if I go to execute this query again, it asks for a category ID. So show me costumes. Now let's see what we get inside of here. So notice the difference. Now notice what we see. We're getting the name, the short description, the unit price, and the on hand. So I'm jacking with a database right here. So I can build the stuff in here, take what I'm doing, and assign it to to one of these SQL data sources. All right? Kind of neat stuff. All right. Let's just cancel out of here. If you specify one or more parameters when you create the select statement in the query builder, the next dialog allows you to define those. And I maybe jump through this quickly. Let's see, I think if we grab data source 1, there it is. If we do this and we choose category name and long name and we choose the where, and we're saying that we want the category ID to be linked to what data source? A control. That control should be DDL category. Okay, if we do all that stuff and click add and click OK and click next, all right. Hopefully I didn't screw that up, but if I did, I did. Let's just cancel out of there. So I showed you this. This is the dialog box that you can use for defining parameters. All right, so notice what we have. The category ID will be associated with the value of the drop-down list. So the control is that one. And again, if we want to, we can give it a default value. So if you specify one or more parameters when you create a custom select statement, the next dialog box that comes up is this one. To define a parameter, you specify the source for the value of each parameter. These are the different parameter sources. You've got control, which is the parameter's value that comes from a control on the page. That's normally what you're going to choose. Query string, which you can use if you want to use that instead of control. So in other words, if you click this drop down, you get control, query string, form, session, profile, and cookie. All right. Let's jump over to the data list control, and that starts in your book on page 462. A data list displays, in fact, let me check my time. I'm already at 26 minutes, so I'm going to stop here. Pick it up on page 462 on the data list in just a couple minutes.